Exactly. Like, and I would feel very different as well if he had started this out by saying, like, by obviously taking a clear stand and saying, yeah, trans people have every right to be treated decently, and that includes respecting their genders, respecting their pronouns, and not fucking around with it. And here's what speaking of Alice, because it's like, I've been spending this entire time trying to decide, is he just absolutely this fucking clueless, that he does not understand what's going on, or does he know exactly what he's doing? Because the level of shittiness of this video depends entirely on whether he just really does not understand the stakes, entirely possible, or whether he knows exactly what the stakes are, and he's said some things that suggest he does, and he's just trying to create some sort of space where people who would like to see trans people vanish off the face of the earth and would be fine with people trying to make that happen have a point and need to be respected in the conversation. Because that's kind of what this all feels like. That is both sides bullshit. Fuck that. There are not two equally legitimate sides here. And so, people who are like, oh, I can't get my head around singular they, that's so hard, that's so unnatural. It's like, I mean, like, Vietnamese is over here like, hey, you really should not talk. Because, in Vietnamese, you can be toi, you can be minh, you can be em, you can be anh, you can be có, you can be chị, all depending on who you're talking to. And each of those in the third person as well. And so, and like third person words, and actually the third person pronouns often are just slight modifications of the first and second I mean, the whole thing is very fluid, is my point. So people who are complaining that, like, getting used to, often the people who are complaining the most about it are the people who are absolutely just don't want to make an effort because, again, it's about not respecting trans people. It's not about, like, linguistic difficulties. This and stuff. There are a few things I'm kind of curious about. There's this guy who keeps showing up in my YouTube recommendations called Language Jones, whose titles really kind of rub me the wrong way. I don't know if he ends up doing something good inside the videos, but I have questions. And so I'm kind of curious looking at what he has to say. He's apparently a linguist. And one video that keeps on showing up in my recs is 6 reasons the gender critical right and the woke left are both wrong about pronouns. And it's like, on the one hand, the fact that they've sort of, he's situated TERFs on the right. I mean, that's kind of encouraging, but on the other hand, making it about the woke left immediately kind of gets my spidey sense going. And I'm kind of curious what these 6 reasons are and whether they're any good. So I'm kind of curious about this video. I have not watched it yet, so I'm just going to say a bit of a content warning here for there. At the very least, there is going to be discussion of transphobic shit. I'm hoping that the video itself does not contain it, but I'm not entirely encouraged by the title.
Pronouns.
Yeah, we've all done that. Pronouns.
I've been a little afraid to make this video, honestly. But
oh God. This is not increasing my confidence that this is going to be a legit discussion. It really is not.
I guarantee you need to hear what I have to say. Everyone...
When I turn this into a VOD, I think I'm going to have a, sort of trustometer of some sort on the screen that just keeps on going down as he talks, because, like, he's prefacing this with all sorts of, I mean, like, with more red flags than fucking Mayday.
Everyone's talking, okay, yelling about pronouns nowadays. Verbs, adjectives, even nouns don't get this level of attention.
Wow. So what?
But for those of us who actually study pronouns, and even publish in academic journals about them, and there are dozens of us, it's hard to watch the public conversation become increasingly unhinged.
Oh God. At this point, there are more red flags than May Day in Pyongyang.
Unfortunately, plenty of well-meaning linguists add oil to the pronoun fire too. Some of the confusion,
Pronoun
anger,
fire. Like, are we gonna pretend that this is actually about pronouns? Are we actually going to pretend that this is a discussion on popular linguistics? That's the reason that I immediately get a bit, suspicious about the fact that he phrases it as this discourse between the gender-critical right and the woke left. Like, trans people don't get a look in his framing there. But I mean, titles are imprecise, maybe he corrects for that. But like, with every single thing he's saying, I am less confident that that is going to happen.
and vitriol is about language, and some of it is about gender. But there's also an overlooked third component related to culture. Today, I'm going to talk
Oh God.
about pronouns
He's going to nuance, bro, this.
and neopronouns, what they are, why people are so worked up, and what regular folks like you and me
Oh, good. Regular folks like you and me. Because, see, the people... Yeah, so, what the people who care about this aren't regular.
can navigate this cultural moment. I'm Dr. Taylor Jones, a straight, cisgendered man, and this is probably a mistake.
I can already say, like, definitely a mistake. And, I mean, from the first 53 seconds of this thing, I never would have guessed that he was a cis straight guy.
What are your pronouns? Many of you have asked or been asked this question. Maybe in person, maybe introducing yourself to a new group of people.
Okay. We're walking out on a limb of benefit of the doubt to see where this goes. Because
Maybe even on a survey or questionnaire. And if you haven't asked or been asked this, you know that people do ask and answer it. Profiles on Twitter might have he/him or she/they listed. Unquestionably, there's a societal shift happening in the Anglosphere.
yeah, I mean, and this is one thing I have to say from another video that I saw. He, like, is trying to phrase this as if it's just going on in the Anglosphere. I mean, he does this, he sort of acts like there's some sort of debate over where X as a gender-neutral suffix in Spanish comes from, because right-wingers in the US have claimed that the X in Latinx is something that was made up by, like, woke people in the US, which is bullshit. It is easily demonstrably false. You can actually, if you spend any time in South America in the past, like, 20 years, you know that X as a gender-neutral suffix was already well established amongst queer people, feminists, and the left in general in Latin America, specifically in South America, well before it was ever used in the US. I have not seen it in Brazil specifically, but it would not surprise me. I mean, and in other parts of the Spanish-speaking world, in Spain, for example, they were achieving the same thing by using an @ symbol, arroba, because it looks like an O with an A around it. I mean, an A with an O around it. It was well established, and he acts like this was some sort of a debate, and it isn't. It just absolutely isn't. The reason Latinx, in particular, does not show up very much outside of the US is not because it's the X as a gender neutral suffix is not used outside of the outside of the US. It's because Latino, Latina, Latine is not a particularly meaningful descriptor for people in Latin America because all it means is people of Latin American origins. That's basically everybody. It's not a distinguishing feature in Latin America. So naturally, the term skews heavily towards communities of Latin American origin living outside Latin America, particularly in North America. So, but okay.
And elsewhere. It's largely
He
motivated
does say and elsewhere.
by a desire to be inclusive and welcoming to the portion of the population that self-identifies as either trans or gender nonconforming, which all basically
self-identifies as trans or it's okay. Another like
boils down to not
why not just is? Why not just say is?
Self-identifying the same way other people might initially categorize you, especially around binary sex categories, male, female, man, woman, etc. Depending on who you ask and which surveys you trust, that's either less than 1% of the population or like 20% of people. Some people are very supportive of this shift, and others are very unhappy about it.
It's a shift. See, notice that we basically, the whole thing is being phrased. First of all, it's just people who self-identify as. Like, as opposed to just saying people, you could just say trans or gender non-conforming people. And I immediately have my doubts about somebody who uses this language, although I've also known people who were trying to get it right, who used that thinking that was actually a better way to say it, but they did not understand why that actually sucks.
About it. But here's the thing. The majority of people I've seen on all sides are wrong about most of what they're talking about.
Well, yes, enlighten us. Why are, both sides? There are both sides to this. There are trans people and there are people who don't want to acknowledge that there are trans people. Those are the both sides. But the cishet white dude is going to tell us all about how, most of what they're talking about, they're wrong. I am filled with confidence right now.
I'll always come down on the side of kindness and inclusion. But
it's even in the subtitles, it's a big but.
A lot of us are going about that wrong too.
Okay, how so?
And sometimes kindness and inclusion are in, we'll say, tension with what we perceive to be truth and honesty.
Okay, yes, that is a big but, and I cannot lie. Yeah, this is, okay. The benefit of the doubt meter at this point is actually starting to hit empty. When you hear this sort of thing, and I'm not going to say 100%, I'm not going to say that this is 100% always the case, but very often when you hear these kinds of prefaces to somebody who's about to talk about trans issues, they're about to say some transphobic shit. Because notice that first he talks about self-identifying as trans or whatever. And now he's saying that kindness and inclusion of trans people, people who self-identify as trans, whatever the hell that means, are in tension with what people perceive to be truth and honesty. Like, okay, this is not good, my dude. This is not good. Like, can you save this? I mean, I don't know. I mean, can Scotland save their match with Germany? Like theoretically, they could score 5 goals in one half, but I don't. It doesn't feel very likely.
So here's 6 reasons why you are wrong about pronouns. 1. You're wrong about what pronouns even are. Many people arguing about pronouns have only the vaguest idea of what pronouns are. People are...
Okay, and you realize, okay, and this is going to be relevant to a discussion about treating trans people with respect. How? Because let's just remember, that is what we are actually talking about. It's not about pronouns. I mean, the people who are talking about this often have the vaguest idea. It is true, a lot of them have no idea what pronouns are. They'll say, I will never use pronouns, and of course you just fucking used one. But that's not what it's about. These are not people who have some sort of inordinate fascination with parts of speech. These are people who don't like trans people. And so far, he has barely even acknowledged that this is about trans people, or that there are trans people, or anything.
They're even worse at identifying pronouns than they are at identifying the passive voice.
I will say, one of the things that annoys the hell out of me, that passive voice thing, that's true. There's so many memes that go around that will show things as passive voice that are not. They serve the same purpose as passive voice, but they are impersonal constructions, agentless constructions. Those are two different things. They serve the same rhetorical and propagandistic purpose a lot of the time. They're not the same thing, damn it. I will admit that is the thing that annoys me. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, people who say there are no pronouns in the Bible, like, what the fuck does that even mean? Yeah, because they don't, but again, they don't give a shit about pronouns. These people are not sitting here, like, looking and being fascinated by the totally relative system of pronouns, relational system of pronouns that exists in Vietnamese versus, you know, more absolute pronouns that exist in, like, Indo-European languages and all that sort of thing. They don't care. This is not about that. They didn't give a shit about pronouns until they started to notice that using the right pronouns was a way to treat trans people with respect, and they don't want to do that.
So you have people out here saying that there are no pronouns in the Bible, and then turning around and saying, thou shalt not.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, and yeah, it's easy to dunk on that because it's such nonsense, but it misses the fucking point. And Thought Slime actually did a really good video on how pointing out why this sort of nonsense is wrong misses the point. He did a thing, it was about Ben Shapiro's weapons grade bad takes. And he did a thing with the pronouns and, like, all that shit.
In this case, I think it's actually important to Ben that you know he is wrong. I believe that he is sending a message by being purposefully and obviously wrong. I believe it to be a flex. Now let's be crystal clear about one thing. Mr. Shapiro does not give one single solitary shit about prescriptivist grammar. The idea that this is simply a dispute about grammar allows him to conceal his bigotry and to make his arguments appealing to people who don't like to think of themselves as bigoted. People who like to think of themselves as neutral, objective people, concerned with logic and reason, not feelings. Like a girl. But what actually bothers Ben about this is that it means an institution of record is acknowledging and validating the existence of people like me. It's the thought that people like me are being recognized and allowed to exist openly and proudly that makes him angry. That's why he complains about language being changed. He could have chosen to make the bigoted argument that he actually wanted to make, which is that non-binary gender identities don't exist and shouldn't be recognized by institutions like the dictionary. That would still be a shitty and controversial opinion, and it would have given him just as much attention and all of the clicks that he requires to live. Instead, he decided to make this about something completely different. Something objective that he was both wrong and uninformed about. Something that he chose to speak with complete conviction about. And why do you think that is? It's to show you that, look, All of these people, they're willing to accept and internalize this extremely obvious lie, just because they hate you. The dictionary might acknowledge you, but none of us will. Don't feel safe. And that's kind of a brilliant and sophisticated strategy. Cloaking his rhetoric in this obvious falsehood means people won't respond to the actual message being sent. Suddenly, this is a fight about what a wangus he is, and how wrong he is. Look, the dictionary owned you, Ben. Get wrecked. The dictionary said you're wrong. Everybody corrects him about the singular they because you can prove he's wrong about that, but they might not even notice the implicit bigotry against NBs, and even if they do, they might not bother to correct it because he's not talking about that part out loud right now. That's why, I said earlier, it wasn't really worth examining why Shapiro was wrong in this case. That's dodging the central issue, which is that he wanted to find a reason to condemn institutional support for non-binary people, so he manufactured a very pathetic one, knowing that his legions of Abercrombies and Fitches would exhaust everyone arguing it to the death. The point is that they will resist any attempt to recognize or accommodate us, even when it doesn't make sense for them to do it. He wants to remind us, hey, us hateful assholes are still around. You're getting comfortable. Maybe you think people are warming up to you. Well, we're still willing to lie and cheat and rally around whatever dipshit gives us an excuse to undermine you. Anything put in place to make you feel more comfortable, to make you feel like you belong, we will intentionally ruin it just to mock you. This type of rhetoric is dangerous precisely because it's so easy to write off as a gaffe. We get the message when he says things like this, consciously or otherwise. It makes us remember that some people mean us harm and cannot be convinced through any rational argument to see things any other way. And honestly, Ben, fuck your feelings. The distress caused to you by having to remember one extra detail about someone you meet is nothing compared to the distress people feel about not having their gender identity recognized. That's why they had to sneak their message past everybody. That's why they have to pretend like they're just discussing grammar. Because if they said it out loud, if they said, why are you doing your jobs objectively, when you know perfectly well it will bring comfort to these degenerates, everybody would be uncomfortable with that.
When the point is that by saying absolutely asinine things like, I don't use pronouns, I'm never going to use pronouns, I'm never going to use them, or whatever, you know, the people doing this are doing this deliberately. They know what they're saying is asinine. And it distracts the conversation because a lot of liberals fall for the bait and immediately start saying, ha ha ha, he doesn't know what pronouns are. Instead of saying, this, you know, nonsense is being used to justify attacks on trans people.
What do you think thou is? Spoiler, it's a pronoun. Even the original language has pronouns in the nominative and pronominal suffixes in other cases. Pronouns in Biblical Hebrew are a whole separate complicated thing. You also have people saying sir or ma'am are pronouns.
Yeah, and again, yeah, I imagine so. But here, yeah, I mean, from a grammatical standpoint, no, they're not. They're forms of address. But the point is, what people are doing there is they are grouping together gendered aspects of language for addressing and referring to people in order to say, you know, that you need to respect people's genders and not misgender them. I mean, yeah, it's wrong to call those things pronouns, but let's like acknowledge what's going on there. And this is what I already just really don't like about this video, because he has not really acknowledged what is going on here.
Or bro, or dude, or guys. They're not. Those are gendered, yes, but they're terms of address that are not pronouns and do not function as pronouns.
No shit. Yeah, it's true, but again, could we at least acknowledge why this is contentious? Could we acknowledge what the stakes of the discussion are before we get into, you know, sort of linguistics nerding our way through it and saying, yeah, these are actually, you know, these are other gendered parts of speech. I mean, it's true, but it's only of peripheral interest in this context.
Most of those terms of address are nouns. regular old vanilla nouns. So pronouns are a category of word, and I'm being vague about what word means in linguistics, that stand in for a noun. They're reusable, so they're kind of like mutable variables in coding. If I talk about my friend Chris, after I've mentioned him, I can use a pronoun. Like I just did. It was
Yeah, I mean,
him. Him refers to Chris, and
yes, I mean, all true, all absolutely right. I mean, but what the fuck does this have to do with the whole thing?
it refers to a pronoun. You might use him thousands of times a day, and it might refer to hundreds of different people. Pronouns are effectively a pointer to some noun the listener should be able to figure out from context.
Yeah, I mean, he's right about all of this, except for the part where this is what the discussion is about.
Across languages, pronouns differ in part by how much information they encode. Some languages make you choose a different pronoun depending on whether the thing referred to is singular or plural, or if there are precisely two. Some make you specify formality and social distance, like French, tu, informal, and vous, formal or plural, or early modern English, thou, informal, and you, formal.
I mean, not just early modern English. I mean, there are parts of England where thou is still used. In, like, Yorkshire and parts of the Potteries area.
Plural. Some languages have inclusive and exclusive we.
I will say one of my favorite features that I wish English had. Because so many times you will hear people say, we are all in this together, and it's accurate if you assume an exclusive we, which means we but not you. But of course, the confusion that they're trying to create is that they're using that you're supposed to think it's an inclusive we including you.
Where they differentiate between us altogether and us but not you. Standard English doesn't distinguish between second person singular and plural. They're both you, but many informal varieties do, with everything from yous to yins to y'all. Some regions of the American South now have y'all as a semi-formal pronoun like French vous, and all y'all is the true plural. And some languages specify gender, some don't. English splits the difference and only specifies gender on third person pronouns. Not I or you, but a special third person. We're talking about you and I. Other languages have gendered versions of I and you in addition to he, she, and it, and so on. That brings us to another thing that you're
all
wrong
this
about.
stuff.
Two,
It's
you're
like,
wrong about gender.
Oh God, this is going to be really bad. I mean, okay, like all the observations he made about the concept of a pronoun, totally correct. But it's like you're going to talk about the concept. I mean, what he's doing here is he's talking about the concept of a pronoun, and he wanted to make it relevant, I guess. And the way his device for making it relevant is to just say he's going to nuance bro the discussion around whether trans people should be treated with basic respect.
Gender is a word related to the word genre. It literally just means type or category. Part of the reason we talk about gender in language is specifically that linguists were trying.
Oh God, is he going to do the thing where people say gender does not refer to like gender as we use it in humans?
Trying not to say sex. We can get into a more detailed discussion, but sex is the physiological and biological reproductive categories for a species. Humans are a sexually dimorphic species that...
No. Unless you just pretend intersex people don't exist.
Reproduces by combining a small mobile gamete with a larger immobile gamete. And
yeah, I mean, and here he's getting out of his field, and he's getting shit wrong as well. Because the thing is, much like species, sex in biology, like, and the reason if you actually look what biologists have to say about the concept of sex and sex in humans in particular, but elsewhere as well, they will say, actually, it is much more complicated than the sort of binary shit that you learn, in, like, second grade or whatever. For a simple reason. Because these are categories, like species, for example. Like, states of matter, that we are trying to map our understanding of these things onto stuff that exists in the world, of which our understanding is often incomplete. So, I mean, the distinction he's trying to make here is already just not really accurate. And it's another just wonderful little red flag that tells me that, I'm not going to say that he's transphobic, but I mean, let me just say that if I were trying to prove I weren't, this is not how I would go about it.
developing human is carried by the person with the larger gamete, unlike seahorses. This is a characterization of the species, not of individuals, who don't all fall into those categories. This is how I imagine humans in the Federation and Star Trek explain human sexes to aliens.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. You're clearly not. I mean, your whole thing is you're a linguist. He is a linguist, and when he was, and the stuff he was saying about language just a second ago, apart again from this, the stakes of this discussion, what it is really about. We're right, but now he's getting into now he's getting into problems. Because he's talking about stuff that is totally outside of his area of expertise.
Explain gender. Before they problematize that. Before they get it on. Gender, on the other hand, means something in the social sciences, and something totally different when we're talking about language.
Yeah, but we're talking about the social sciences aspect of it. We're talking, and actually really also about the biological aspect of it. Like, we're not talking about the gender of the word datish. We're not talking about that. Nobody is talking about, like, the genders of... First of all, because we don't really gender inanimate objects for the most part in English. We don't absolutely not do it. Like, you will hear people talk about, like, ships as she or whatever, and sometimes, like, vehicles or, pieces of equipment or something like that as she or whatever. Interesting, it's virtually always feminine there. But this isn't what we're talking about. We're not talking about grammatical gender. We are literally talking about the area where grammatical gender maps to to the gender of humans. So yeah, it means something different when we're talking about language, but dude, what are we that's not what we're really talking about here.
In the social sciences, it can be thought of as all the ways that we expect humans to act, speak, behave, and dress based on socially constructed categories. These categories are often, but not always, related to, but not determined by, sex distinctions. There are many
I will say that's better than expected.
Cultures that famously have at least 3 social genders.
Okay, again, better than expected, but I mean, we're talking about the specific area where social genders and linguistic gender overlap. That is literally what we're talking about here. So, I mean, all the other stuff you can say, I bet he's going to point out that, like Bantu languages famously have a large number of genders, but actually, I mean, a lot of people have abandoned that language because it doesn't really make sense in context, because it is actually noun classifiers.
India to Thailand to some Native American cultures. In linguistics, though, it's categories for classes of nouns. English has masculine and feminine, basically on pronouns only, and we use those pronouns to talk about people, so you basically have to categorize them as one or the other if the referent is known to the listener. If not, I can do what I just did and say they or them for a singular referent.
Yeah, of course, non-binary people exist. Sometimes you use they for a singular referent because that is an accurate description of their gender.
Categorize them as one or the other. But other languages don't have genders that line up with biological sexual dimorphism. The word for woman in German is feminine, and man is masculine, but girl is neuter?
Yeah, because it has a suffix. It has a diminutive suffix that it turns everything neuter that it goes on. But this is not what we're... Well, I mean, this is closer to what we're talking about than other stuff, but, like...
In Dutch, there's 2 genders, but both man and woman are common gender, and girl is neuter. In Zulu...
Yeah, again, because of a diminutive suffix.
There's 14 genders, but 6 are different classes, and another 6 are the plurals of the first 6.
Yeah, this is what I was just talking about with the Bantu language. In fact, a lot of the time, the term gender is abandoned in favor of noun class. Because a lot of the time it's like cylindrical objects, or languages, or foreign loanwords, or something like that. Not what we would generally think of as gender in a grammatical sense.
The last two make things into either verbs or abstract ideas. So Ubuntu is a person, Abantu are people, Isintu is a race or humankind, and Ubuntu is the abstract concept of humanity. I have to use U as the third person singular pronoun no matter who I'm talking about. And
Yeah, because actually, when it comes to like gender, in the sense that matters for this context, everything's ooh. It does not really do gendered pronouns in the way that is relevant to this discussion. But he is so far away from this fucking discussion. It's like, I mean, this is interesting stuff from a linguistic standpoint. I find it fascinating. Like, as I said earlier, Isizulu is a language that I'm trying on and off to learn. I find this stuff fascinating. But this is not, I mean, if you want to talk about this stuff, talk about this stuff, but why do you have to make it, why do you have to frame it this way? Why do you have to, like, both sides it and situate it within the debate over whether trans people should be treated with respect?
nobody can identify as C instead because it would just not be understood. And even in languages where they're called, quote, masculine and feminine, a man is masculine and a woman.
I know this
In
is
French,
fascinating.
person is feminine, une personne. And the word for female genitalia, what linguists call the hoo-ha, is masculine, le vagin. Slang terms for the male member, like peep and beat, are feminine because it's about linguistic categories, not.
Yeah, which is why this is actually, it's like, yeah. I mean, this is frustrating because, yeah, I mean, he's right, and this is interesting. I mean, it is interesting stuff. From a linguistic standpoint, I'm fascinated by this kind of thing. It's weird, it's neat. It makes very little sense, and yet we just sort of take it for granted. But you managed to, you framed this whole thing in a very specific way. And I notice we're talking about basically everything but what the framing would tell us you're talking about.
Social or biological categories. By the way, if you speak other languages, now's the perfect time to leave me a comment below with the most interesting grammatical gender or the funniest mismatch that you've come across.
Really?
Already discussed how in some other languages there's a move toward gender-neutral terms only for nouns and pronouns that refer to humans, which basically just makes an animate-inanimate distinction, which is, wait for it, another gender. Anyway, in English, there's a trend toward using what people sometimes call neopronouns. That's singular they for a named referent, or
That's not really a singular they is not a neopronoun though. Like usually neopronouns refers to words that did not previously exist that are being used as pronouns. Like Z or something like that in English. They, for a singular referent, already was well established. The only thing that is at all, could be considered even remotely novel is using it for a known referent to acknowledge that they are non-binary.
pronouns like ze or her. And you're all wrong about those too. Doubly wrong. 3.
Yeah. Okay. The way he's saying that, maybe this is going to be, maybe this one's going to be okay, but I mean, it's like, it's better than expected in some respects, but it misses the point.
You're wrong about how hard neopronouns are. First, you're wrong about how hard they are. In Intro to Linguistics, undergrads are often taught that pronouns are a, quote, closed class. This means that unlike verbs or adjectives, it's really hard to add new ones.
I mean, it happens less often. It definitely happens less often than nouns or verbs or adjectives. But I mean, calling it a closed class would suggest that it actually, that you never add anything, and that's definitely not true.
And yet new ones organically arise all the time. Vosotros is a relatively new pronoun in the history of Spanish. Portuguese has an impersonal a gente, and French has a generic on that can mean anything from the third person to the first person plural. Anything from the third person to the first person plural. To even first person singular if you don't want to take personal responsibility for what you're talking about. I've even co-authored work on how some forms of the N-word, yes, that one, meet the syntactic requirements for pronounhood in African American English.
I mean, actually, that is actually one of the features of AVE, that often nouns will stand in a way that actually is very, behave in a very pronoun-like way. And that kind of actually, I don't know whether this is in fact the history of it, but it does certainly fit in with a lot of non-Indo-European, including some African languages, that behave very similarly with pronouns, like where they are actually a noun taking a pronoun function.
And that's definitely a new development. And if it were so hard for us to learn new pronouns, I shouldn't be able to understand who use refers to or using myself with use guys. Besides, many of us learn foreign languages and somehow do fine learning new pronouns in different languages.
And use, it's worth noting. That has a long history in Ireland specifically, a place where the native language has singular, plural, and feminine, not feminine, but formal, informal, second person pronoun distinctions. But again, okay, his point is actually people add a new, there are pronoun add ons more than you think. And that's true. When people are saying that it's hard, neopronouns are hard, I don't think for the most part that they're actually talking about that. They're talking about getting used to adding those things into their personal usage, which can be difficult because on an individual level, you're used to a certain stock of pronouns. So adding one in there becomes a little bit like learning another language on a very micro level. So, yeah. Yeah, it's like this whole thing, apart from a couple of things where he was just wrong, it's like he's right about this, but it's just missing the point, and it feels really, it's it just there's sort of an icky feeling to that, because either he does not particularly care about the actual stakes of the discussion that he has sort of positioned himself in with this entire framing of this video, or he does care and he is trying to avoid being quite open, and he also, he does not, look at the way that he talked about objecting to using people's pronouns correctly or something like that, and he made it about that people feel it's at odds with their sense of honesty or something like that. No, they're fucking bigots. They don't like trans people. That's the problem. And if you don't name that, that's actually legitimizing that. And that isn't good. We need to understand that when we're talking about this stuff, we are not not just talking about language. We are talking about the treatment of human beings, particularly
So saying,
marginalized
this is
human
Bex, they go by they, is not as impossible as people make it out to be.
Well, now, why do the people who make it out to be impossible say that, though? Apart from people who say, okay, I know I'm going to screw this up a few times. Please be patient. I really am trying. I am going to get it right, and they do screw it up a couple of times. But on the whole, they get it right. But then the people who really go on about it being impossible are the people who don't want to do it, and who want to actually give comfort to other people who also don't want to do it because they don't like trans people and they don't like non-binary people and everything. And I think when we talk about language, I've heard people sometimes say, you talk about language, you want to keep, you try to separate language completely from society and politics and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, that is very artificial, because language is social. The reason we have language, as far as anyone can tell, is because we're very social creatures, humans. Language is often political. The usage of it is often political. The reason that, he uses the N-word to refer to the N-word is precisely a political thing, namely the importance of treating the people who are meant by that with respect. And respecting that it is not a good look when, especially white people use it for all sorts of fucking historical reasons that are all horrible. You can't completely, there is no totally apolitical approach to language. And here, I mean, it's like, it's just icky. I just don't like, I really do not like the way he's done this.
But it's also not as easy as some people claim, which brings me to 4. You're wrong about how easy neopronouns are. There are plenty of studies that indicate that ambiguity in pronouns, in sentences like, he hit him, incur a processing cost. That
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. Yeah, because you have to assign the same placeholder, the same pronoun to two different reference. Yeah, but that's not what anyone's talking about here.
That is, they're annoying and make your brain tired. It's a higher cost when there's a perceived mismatch, like in Alice didn't like what Bob said, so he hit them.
Yeah, I mean it takes getting used to, and of course there's more than one way of that could actually mean, because in this scheme he's saying, if you notice these numerals by Alice and Bob and he and them, the assumption is Alice is he and Bob is them. That is definitely one possibility, but of course, depending on context, he hit them could actually be referring to somebody completely different. Like, say there is a third person who is assisting Alice, and that third person's pronoun is he. And there are a group of people who have been told their asses are going to kick if Bob says the wrong thing, and be kicked if Bob says the wrong thing. And so Alice didn't like what Bob said. So he, the person helping Alice, hit those people. That's also a possibility. Yeah, I mean, there is, that sentence, but that's not the point. And the thing is, again, I mean, yeah, I think everybody in this discussion who is talking about it seriously knows it takes a certain amount of getting used to if there are new pronouns for a person you've always known by certain pronouns by default and never had to think about it. No, I don't think anyone thinks that that is 100% going to be always going to be a smooth shift. But yeah, there is a difference. The thing that people are pointing out is that there's a difference between people who are trying to make an effort to treat somebody with respect by, gendering them in accordance with who they are, versus people who say, "Oh, it's really, really hard," and just never make a fucking effort. And again, I mean, this is what is just really maddening about this video, because the stakes are not acknowledged. And instead, he just goes off on these tangents, which are interesting tangents. They're absolutely interesting tangents. But, you framed this in a certain way, and the stakes in the discussion that you framed it as part of are absolutely quite high. And so you can't just go off on these little tangents without acknowledging what this is about, if that's what you want to make it a part of. If you wanted to just do a thing about interesting stuff about pronouns, you probably wouldn't get quite as many views as throwing in like buzzwords like gender critical and woke would get. But at the very least, then you would not have to, on the one hand, provide this framing that situates it within a discussion that is really about whether, trans people should be treated decently. In order to have your video about all the wacky weird shit about noun classes and pronouns. Yeah, I really do not like this.
And lots of experimental evidence from psycholinguistics shows that singular they for a named referent is harder to follow. There are translinguists who research pronoun use, and even they find that some people have an easier time and some people have a harder time with new, unusual, or unexpected pronoun use. It's harder.
Yeah, I mean, nobody seriously denies that though. Nobody seriously denies that that's the case.
To figure out who Z refers to, and it's harder to consistently remember to map a person to a new category like Z when we have a lifetime of practice mapping that person to she, for instance.
Yeah, it would. True, and like totally uncontroversial.
There's a higher level of cognitive stress when we're in a social situation where we're expected to use pronouns we're not comfortable with. It's like all the stress of practicing a foreign
This
language.
video is annoying and makes my brain tired. And the wild thing about it is, if you were to just frame it differently, I would really like this video. But he has framed it in a way that just immediately situates it in a place where it's just inappropriate.
With the additional element that you might deeply offend your listeners at literally any new sentence. And don't even.
Yeah, except again, people do understand when somebody fucks up versus when somebody is deliberately trying to give offense.
Think about just avoiding pronouns. If you say Alice saw Alice in the mirror and Alice liked how Alice looked, you sound like an absolute basket case. Plus, remember how I said that pronouns are like pointers in code? Well, the consensus in psycholinguistics is that as I said that sentence, you were instantiating new Alices all over the place, and then had to rectify that they all referred to the same Alice after the fact. The default is to make new conceptual objects you have to track, and that's fatiguing.
Well, I mean, and actually, this varies heavily from language to language. Like, there are languages where pronouns tend to be avoided. Japanese, to a great extent, does not use. I mean, there are pronouns there, but often what is used instead of a pronoun is another referent, like a title or the person's name or something like that. In fact, including for like the second person. So there are languages where that sentence Alice did Alice said Alice went and Alice did and Alice whatever the hell that was. There are languages where that would actually be a pretty normal way of saying it.
For everybody, both speaker and listener. So
Yeah, he's brought up. Riveroon says he's brought up several interesting aspects of language, but in a framework that is like an erasure of transphobia and the cost of that big. Yeah, exactly. Like, and I would feel very different as well if he had started this out by saying, like, by obviously taking a clear stand and saying, yeah, trans people have every right to be treated decently. And that includes respecting their genders, respecting their pronouns, and not fucking around with it. If he had started out by that and said, but here's some interesting stuff about pronouns. And in this context, and I really hope, that he might bring this up, but I don't think he will because I think we're running out of items on this list. But, like, all the people who are like, oh, these pronouns are so hard and everything like that. There are entire languages where every single pronoun you use varies depending on your relationship to the people you're talking to and the people you're talking about. Like, Vietnamese has an extremely rich system of pronouns that will vary. Like, I will vary depending on who you are and who you are in relation to the person you're talking to. Same with he and she and they and all of them. And so, people who are like, oh, I can't get my head around singular they, that's so hard, that's so unnatural. It's like, I mean, like, Vietnamese is over here like, hey, do you even, you really should not talk. Because, in Vietnamese, you can be toy, you can be min, you can be em, you can be ein, you can be go, you can be chi, all depending on who you're talking to. And and each of those in the third person as well. And so, and like third person words, and like actually the third person pronouns often are just slight modifications of the first and second I mean, the whole thing is very fluid, is my point. So people who are complaining that they're like getting used to, often the people who are complaining the most about it are the people who are absolutely just don't want to make an effort because, again, it's about not respecting trans people. It's not about like linguistic difficulties. Um, it's God, it's like
Just as the people saying it's impossible to learn new pronouns are wrong, the people acting like it's the easiest thing in the world are
non-existent,
also very wrong. But all of that ignores the bigger,
or
deeper
would be if they existed.
issue. 5. You're wrong about culture. A huge overlooked part of the pronoun debate is that both sides have unspoken, culturally informed assumptions that dramatically influence how we think about this conversation.
Oh, good. Are we gonna like? Is he ever really going to acknowledge? He's not going to acknowledge the stakes of this. He's not going to acknowledge what the actual debate is about,
Advocates used to refer to so-and-so's, quote, preferred pronouns. Now
which sucked.
people will say my pronouns are.
Yeah, because preferred pronouns suggest that actually we all know that that the real pronouns are this, but we're gonna humor them and use their preferred ones, and that sucks. That's why people stopped doing that.
Here's the thing. This is one cultural approach among many. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I am saying it's not universal.
What? Okay, not universal meaning what?
In English, we talk about third-person pronouns. Literally, how someone talks about us when they're not talking to us.
Yes, true.
To say that I, as an individual, can determine how I'm spoken about by others, even when I'm not around, is on the extreme individualist end of the individualist collectivist continuum.
No, not really. Because for like literally everybody else, what we're talking about is whether trans people get to be treated with the same respect as everyone else does. It's not about extreme individualism.
And the extreme individualists on the other side will predictably say, you can't tell me what words are supposed to come out of my mouth. We don't have to go into a deep dive on thinking about dimensions of culture like Geert Hofstede's classic Culture's Consequences.
This is okay. This just got so much fucking worse because he's now explaining how actually wanting to be, wanting to have not to be misgendered when people are talking about you is extreme individualism. Despite the fact that this is just sort of a general cultural expectation for literally everybody else. Yeah, he's doing that. Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. I actually liked this video better when he was moving away from talking about the actual topic of discussion that he invoked with his title and talking about random stuff about how pronouns work. I thought that was interesting, at least. But here, here he is talking about something where you absolutely cannot dodge the stakes. You can either acknowledge what the stakes are of the actual stakes of the debate, namely, do trans people get treated with, at the very least, the same level of respect that everybody else takes for granted, or not? And what are the consequences of that for trans people's ability to live in the society? Or you can say everybody's just extreme individualists and not acknowledge what's going on at all. Because I'm pretty sure he not only reasonably expects that people will refer to him as he when he's not there, and that he is actually correct in expecting that.
To see that there are other ways of thinking about this. In a highly collectivist or community-oriented culture, I might simply assume that the categories that already exist in my culture are what I can choose from. This raises questions of how new categories emerge, and that if I want to be referred to in a certain way, it's up to others to choose to refer to me in that way.
Yes, but the point is, those choices are not just neutral choices. And the question becomes, what are the factors there? And one of those factors are like, are you going to show like the basic respect for the person? I mean, this is, for a. Oh, this is like, could we just acknowledge that he doesn't acknowledge the stakes, and then he says all this shit, he talks
So
all
my
this shit, this
appearance, my
sucks.
behavior, and so on can influence that. But I don't get to determine it any more than I get to determine. But I don't get to determine it any more than I get to determine. But I don't get to determine it any more than I get to determine my adjectives, handsome, intelligent, or what nouns are used to refer to me.
Uh, I've got some adjectives and nouns for you right now, actually.
Zaddy.
Yeah, but the point is, it's like, first of all, these are different categories. Like, I mean, seriously, a linguist ought to understand that there is a difference between acknowledging a person's gender and what, like, how they're spoken of in a more general sense. MRW, men's rights activist.
I'll reiterate that I'm on the side of inclusion and kindness. So when
Like, I mean, even this really just falls flat. He said that before. Inclusion and kindness. Like, what the fuck does that mean, though? Like, I mean, you can find plenty of people like, who treat trans people with zero respect and will say, oh, they're being kind. Actually, if you actually listen to, like, the fucking Westboro Baptist Church motherfuckers, they will claim that what they're doing is being kind because they're trying to keep you out of hell. you know uh, and that may be entirely cynical, or they may actually have convinced themselves in their fucked up minds that that's what they're doing. But it's why saying inclusion and kindness in this, does not actually address the thing. My reaction when, yeah, yeah, I know. I mean, it's like he saved the worst for last here.
someone tells me how they feel they should be referred to, I respect that. But it also means that when people ask me my pronouns, I don't really have a satisfying answer. Call me
Yeah, really? You don't have a satisfying answer, so you would absolutely have no problem if everyone was constantly like calling you she or something like that. You absolutely would have no objection if people were constantly saying that and gendering you in a way that very clearly, I'm going to just guess here because you have not said anything that suggests otherwise, and I think actually he has said some things that very clearly speak to this. Uh, I think you might find that there's a processing cost to being constantly misgendered, to use your term, because it's annoying and makes your brain tired, and in extreme cases makes your brain tired of continuing to have any electrical activity at all.
whatever you want when you're talking about me, just so long as it ain't late for supper. Other straight guys might be livid at being called she, but I don't get that. And there's plenty of aspects of my
Well,
identity that are
maybe if you
important.
don't get that. First of all, I mean, he's talking about hypotheticals. It has not happened to him. It would just be as an idiosyncratic thing because he is a fucking straight cis dude, and and it's just not going to happen. So, which is why you might want to actually look into people who it does happen to, and see whether they share your feelings, and maybe their feelings also matter in this, and maybe the fact that the people who are most vocal about not respecting their description, respecting their pronouns, respecting their gender, might be doing something more than just fucking, I don't know, extreme individualism. Maybe they're doing actually a bigotry or something like
To me that some other people fail or refuse to acknowledge out of prejudice, malice, disagreement, or sheer ignorance.
well, or because you, I mean, clearly identify as somebody who should have an opinion in this subject. in this discussion and whose opinion should have some kind of weight. And I have to say, I mean, I'm not seeing it. Your opinion, you identify as a person whose opinions weigh a hell of a lot more than they actually read when you put them on the scale of what this fucking discussion is actually about.
This applies to both my self-conception, handsome, intelligent, and my group memberships, AE speaker, Jew. Of course, some of those have established norms and boundaries, so you can't just claim to be a PhD or a Jew based on vibes alone. And some are grading it. I can get certified at C2 in French, but not African American English.
Now, why is that, do you think? I mean, why do you think that some languages don't actually, where there's no formal recognition? Because maybe that's also one of those things, maybe you could do a fucking listicle on that and explain how, and manage to talk about how there's so little, like, official recognition of AAVE as a language in anywhere, without ever talking about the fact that there is racism.
And what would it mean to be certified as a man or a woman?
What would it mean? I mean, like, have you checked your ID documents? What would it, I mean, the real hypothetical, if we want to get hypothetical about it, is what if we did not have any such certification system? Or what if that certification system actually, really took into account what we all have to say about ourselves? I mean, you are that.
Dare I ask you to leave a comment below? And if
I do not want to look at the comments on this fucking video.
talking about my group memberships and multiple identities, I'm large, I contain multitudes, maybe I don't always want to have that discussion with every damn buddy.
I wonder if there are marginalized people who also feel the same way.
That's why, number 6, you're wrong.
Oh God, he's gonna tell us we're. Oh God, this is gonna get worse. I knew this was gonna get worse. Oh, yeah, I didn't see it. Yeah, yes. This is a conlang that uses English vocabulary and grammar, but with an entirely different semantics. Very true. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is coming into this discussion from a fucking parallel universe. And I'm not gonna say that Spock has facial hair in his parallel universe. But I'm not feeling like it's a parallel universe where Spock doesn't have facial hair.
Wrong about inclusion. Choosing to share what pronouns correspond to your gender identity is a way of normalizing open discussion and acceptance of what people sometimes call, quote, non-traditional genders.
That's all I got.
It's not a perfect phrase, I know. Makes sense as a
Yeah, you could say that. You could say it's not a perfect.
reasonable way of normalizing inclusion. But sometimes, in the spirit of inclusion, we go a little far. Requiring people to share their pronouns means that you either force people to out themselves, not great, or choose to be in the closet, not great. It means that people who can't identify a pronoun, remember that's most people, are put on the spot, and they know it's a question that will affect how people think of them as moral beings in the world.
You're saying that maybe there are actually kind of high stakes for being identifiably not cis? It would have been nice if this had been acknowledged in the whole 14 minutes and 13 seconds of discussion that preceded. because it seems like that's a kind of an important point.
But they don't quite grok the question in the first place. It's bad vibes all around. It also might put different social pressures in conflict with one another. I was
There are social pressures. Wow. He got there. He noticed that there are social pressures.
at a conference a few years back, and one of my colleagues who is an expert on the N word, yes, that one, he's got a book about it coming out soon, put the N word, no R, as his pronoun on the right end part of the name tag.
Okay.
Yes, it can function as a pronoun, and yes, it's literally an important part of his identity, but also it's a social taboo for anyone who's not black. That's like 98% of the conference to say that word, let alone in addressing a black man.
And this immediately raises the question, is that in fact how he wanted did he do that because he wanted people to refer to him that way? Did he do that because he was making a joke about the subject of his research that he's known for? Or did he do that in order to take the piss out of the idea of acknowledging what pronouns people have and acknowledging people's gender and stuff? I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can read that. And maybe, I mean, it seems like this is somebody he knows, so maybe it might have come up in conversation. He could have asked, is this actually how you want everybody to refer to you? And he could have said yes or no. Seemed to be, but
He was highlighting the tensions around identity, speech community, self determination, and respect. If you truly respect him, you'll respect his chosen pronoun. But you also socially cannot call him that. It was a
yeah. Oh, it was a provocative. Like, I mean, I'm immediately wondering if this. Yeah. Is this James O'Keefe involved? Is this the guy who's associated with the fake video mill Project Veritas?
provocative move that got people talking and thinking about all of these levels of language.
Yeah. We've moved away from acknowledging acknowledging the stakes.
And yes, it was at a linguistics conference, basically the only place that that would land. And it's not just that word. People who may want, prefer, demand, or expect other pronouns may do so for a variety of reasons.
Really?
I've come across a few people who take delight in causing others confusion and
Well,
watching them work it out in real time. That's
yeah, but again, that is let's we were talking about people being wrong about culture a couple of minutes ago. Well, here's the thing. The reason that people get confused around the third person singular pronouns for a non-binary person, oh, and they're using different ones, and that is because there are certain cultural normative expectations around these things that are being challenged.
a tiny minority of a group that's already a tiny minority. It's also a real phenomenon. Another issue is that people
Yeah, I mean, it's weird how that gets a mention. That tiny minority that's also a real phenomenon that we absolutely must acknowledge, um, gets more of a mention than what this discussion's actually about when the fucking public discourse on pronouns.
who don't respect you are going to find a way to show it anyway.
Well, there's no harm in taking one way away from them. I mean, you could say the same thing about creating a cultural taboo against using racial slurs, for example. Yeah, they're going to find other ways to show you disrespect. Yeah, make them have to look for it. Take away one obvious, easy one for them. If they want to continue showing disrespect, they're going to have to put in more effort. It will have more processing cost. Fuck them. Like, I mean, you could make this argument about, like, just about any rule of, like, social any kind of rule of like social conviviality, social etiquette, or whatever.
Even the people who think that there are only two genders and you can't change them will intentionally misgender straight cisgender people for social reasons.
What social reasons? Well, I mean, apart from the one where they will often assume that somebody's trans and they're not, because they have like a non-normative gender presentation in some way, which is a whole fucking thing. But I mean, it's nice that he just, like, we're 15 minutes into this video, and he's just acknowledged that intentional misgendering is a thing. In this video about why the gender critical right and the woke left are both wrong.
So your best case scenario is that you at least can sort people into those who try to be respectful and those who don't behave like civilized adults.
You think that that isn't something people are already doing? Like, welcome to the fucking state of the discussion. He just noticed, like, that people actually do recognize the difference. I mean, what was Oliver Wendell Holmes in some decision on intent said that even dogs know the difference between being tripped over and kicked. And he's just only recently begun to acknowledge that maybe people who get tripped over a lot, metaphorically speaking, can tell the difference between that and being intentionally kicked. Like, I mean, where was this when we were talking about culture and easy and how hard versus easy it is to adopt neopronouns and shit? Where was that acknowledgement there? Yeah, that's true. People do know the difference between it being intentionally misgendered and people taking a minute to get used to it. For fuck's sake. Yeah, for social reasons. Yeah, that's exactly. I mean,
which is not nothing. So what do we do with all this information?
oh wow.
Well,
I mean, that's so big of you to acknowledge. Person who, as you just acknowledged, basically never has to deal with this and therefore feels absolutely nothing about the about the hypothetical possibility that somebody might intentionally misgender it.
if you believe there's a global trafficking ring being run by one political party out of the basement of a pizza parlor that doesn't even have a basement, and you're waiting for your orders from JFK, then I'm not sure I can say anything useful. And if you're changing your pronouns every third hour or so just to mess with people, you get what you get.
Those are, of course, the fucking poles of the discussion. Seriously. Oh god, this is worse than I thought. This is actually managed. I came into this, people who were there, like, when I was looking at the very beginning, and I think pretty much that's chat. You were, I think, all there at the time. Were noticing that I was, like, already saying that the presumption of good faith and the benefit of the doubt were wearing thin, and that we were starting to see some red flags. This got worse than I thought it was going to be. This sucks. This really sucks. This actually went from being shitty in the sense that it's a discussion of linguistic concepts that has been shoehorned into a discussion that he doesn't really want to acknowledge the stakes of, to taking a shitty position in that discussion. From a position of not being the one who is facing really high stakes.
The rest of us, if you just want to be a decent person who respects others' identities, even if you don't fully understand them, here's 3 ideas. The third is contentious, admittedly, and you may not agree.
Oh god. Oh no. Maybe just shut up about the contentious things. You have not been doing well with the contentious things.
With me, so take it with a grain of salt.
Oh, why a grain? Why not just get one of those big fucking salt licks they put out for deer?
1. Don't force people to categorize themselves for your gratification.
This is the real problem. This is the real problem that's going on. That was very important to give that pride of place as number 1.
It's the same with gender as it is for genetic ancestry and ethnicity. It's never great to demand, "What are you?" to someone. And it's hardly ever actually relevant. When they're ready for you to know, they'll share what they want to share. I might be in the minority here, but I always felt like Pat was not the butt of the joke on that.
Pat was the butt of the joke. Pat absolutely was the butt of the joke. The whole thing was about laughing at Pat and Pat's androgyny and shit.
SNL's It's Pat. Pat just shows up to work and shares birthday cake and lives their life. 2.
Yes, and that's what makes it funny.
When people do share
That's why it's supposed to be funny. That's why it was such a shitty sketch that they kept on coming back to.
if you respect them, you'll respect what they share.
What the fuck does that mean, though? What if people, what if people share that, like, they're big transphobes, for example? Since we're talking about pronouns, which, let's be honest, in this case, it's not actually a discussion about pronouns, as he kind of, like, acknowledged in a really sort of shitty backhanded way very early on. It's actually a discussion about whether to treat marginalized people with basic respect. But, there's some things that people share and they absolutely should not be respected for it.
If that means pronouns that are hard for you, then doing that brain-tiring work of learning and using new pronouns is behavior that demonstrates that respect.
See, I would why not lead with that? Why not lead with some acknowledgement that the actual stake is like treating people with respect or not?
And it's about as hard as talking to someone who just keeps using pronouns the normal way, but ambiguously. Did you hear about Fred and Steve? He told him he'd see him tomorrow, but he didn't see him. But it turned out he was there because he just wasn't looking in the right place. 3. This one's the contentious one.
Okay. I can't wait.
Linguists talk about something called audience design, meaning choosing how you talk to someone based on who you're talking to. I've seen instances where people...
yeah, I mean, and you could do a whole thing on who he's clearly talking to with this. Because he's clearly designed this, like, from the title and the framing to the content. He has a certain audience in mind. And I think we can draw some very useful, very stress testable, reliable conclusions on what that is. And in particular, his audience is not trans people.
People intentionally use pronouns they know won't be understood.
Like, how often? And don't show us that one fucking YouTube comment again. I can show you, I mean, like, if we're talking YouTube comments, you realize the range of random, completely irreproducible shit that you could claim is a social phenomenon based on the fact that there's one YouTube comment.
Without clarification, to refer to someone who's not present. That sends a signal to the listener that you don't actually care about...
Well, how do they know they're not understood? Like, there's a lot of assumptions in here.
Communicating with them, and you're prioritizing someone who isn't even there in the first place, over treating the listener with respect.
So, what? Okay. So, what are you suggesting? Because it seems like the way... Well, like, why is the listener completely... like, has the listener not had it explained to them that this person's pronouns are something that they're just not expecting? Like, I'm trying to map this to an actual interaction. Because he's trying to create a zero-sum game where you can treat your listener with respect, or you can speak respectfully of a marginalized person.
To me, that feels kind of shitty.
To me, a lot of this whole fucking video feels kind of shitty, to be honest. But this, like, weird-ass hypothetical that you totally witnessed also feels kind of shitty.
If your goal is to show your commitment to a social movement, or an ideal...
This is like... So, he's practically just saying transgender ideology.
At the expense of your relationship with the listener, then that's a fine strategy.
Well, what about your relationship with the person you're talking about? Does that matter? It seems like you've already sort of dismissed that. Why is that? And we're just assuming that the listener, for some reason, isn't capable of understanding this. Like, he doesn't say in what context.
I generally fall on the side of audience design and showing respect for the people that you're actually talking with. And in some cases, this might mean using pronouns the listener will understand.
Well, you've just explained that actually it's not that hard for people to understand the pronouns. So why would you just start with misgendering the person? Why not just start with explaining these are this person's pronouns? Like, why do we immediately have to resort to this?
Rather than the pronouns
Speaking of things that are shitty,
the absent third party would insist on. You may disagree about what the trade-off is there and where to draw the line.
you don't even acknowledge what the trade-off is and why you're drawing this line this way. You just sort of act like this is the only option. I mean, I'm still struggling to come up with an example of where this would be the case. Like, where I'm struggling to find a single situation where, absent, like, dementia, or something like that, where somebody has a serious cognitive problem and perhaps they, as a result of that, like, they have no recollection of this person having transition and they just can't follow it, or something like that. That is a very specific sort of situation and not at all referenced in his description there. But other than that, he has not explained why in this situation he insists is not hypothetical. You wouldn't just say, hey, these are this person's pronouns. That's just how that's their pronouns, and that should clear it up.
If it's clear it's not malice, I'm definitely fine with listening for what people are trying to say rather than what they actually do say. Things are rarely black and white, and we have to figure out how to navigate the gray in ways that...
Yeah, I mean, and here's what speaking of Alice, because it's like, I've been spending this entire time trying to decide, is he just absolutely this fucking clueless that he does not understand what's going on, or does he know exactly what he's doing? Because the level of shittiness of this video depends entirely on whether he just really does not understand the stakes, entirely possible, or whether he knows exactly what the stakes are, and he's said some things that suggest he does, and he's just trying to create some sort of space where people who would like to see trans people vanish off the face of the earth and would be fine with people trying to make that happen have a point and need to be respected in the conversation. Because that's kind of what this all feels like. That is both sides bullshit. Fuck that. There are not two equally legitimate sides here. And I can't help noticing that he extends way more presumption of good faith towards the side that literally wants to see trans people morally mandated out of existence. And that's kind of a shitty thing to do.
Demonstrates respect for one another. I guess another way to say that things aren't always black and white.
Douchebag. That's good. Yeah, that's exactly right. That is exactly why this video has been so hard to deal with on a live, live without having pre-watched it or anything, because trying to figure out just exactly how shitty he's being and how just clueless and how much of this is just cluelessness and how much of it is deliberate shittiness is actually hard. But as it's gone on and it's gone on and on and on and on, it's become a little bit clearer. But I mean, we are running out of time here. I'm going to be wrapping up really quickly.
Is to say, sometimes things aren't binary. One thing's for sure.
You don't get to make that fucking joke after this video.
Arguing with people about their identity is never effective, and
that's the objection, that it's not effective. That's not. Speaking of things that require an antecedent, effective requires some indication of purpose. You can't say something is effective or not effective without making some assumptions or having some concept of what the intention is.
And always a waste of time. And having to defend your own identity is always exhausting.
Yeah, it has a bit of a processing cost, you might say.
And to make things worse, the entire discussion is predicated on a mix of ignorance of linguistics, biology,
Well,
sociology,
nobody think of the linguists.
and culture, and the places where those don't line up. So everybody should maybe just take a few deep breaths.
God, thank you, guy who has absolutely no stake in the discussion. We all needed to be told to calm down by the guy who has made it clear this does not affect him.
Not everybody has to agree. The problem is when this goes from abstract philosophical differences
Which this never was.
to trying to take people's rights away or
I wonder if that has any.
threatening them with harm.
I wonder if that is anything to do with the discussion we're having.
And part of why I wanted to make this video is to point out that basically everything people are saying about pronouns is wrong, in part because it's not really about pronouns.
See, again, in things that you really should have said straight up.
It's about societal acceptance of different sexual orientations and social gender.
Like, okay, now I feel like Charlie Brown with the football. This motherfucker just Lucy'd me. I just went up and kicked it because I thought he was about to say it's about treating marginalized people with respect, and I should have known better. I absolutely should have known better because I've sat through this whole bloody video. And if he was going to say that, he would have said it before. And if that were really the point he was trying to hammer home, we would have heard more of it. Yeah, he treats culture as if it's an a priori given that does not change, and as if, anyone, the people who are trying to change the culture in order to create space for their existence are somehow the baddies. Or, as George W. Bush put it, fool me twice, don't get fooled again.
And it's about the tension between self-determination, this is who I am, and other people's self-determination.
Oh, God. Oh, God. It's like... This is what it must have felt like to bat. What it must feel like to bat at the pitch in Nassau County, what is now like certified the worst, most dangerous pitch in international cricket, where where balls hitting at the exact same spot will do radically different things. The same ball that that was bowled at 90 miles an hour and hit your whiz past your knee pads the first time is actually going for your jaw the next time. This is what that must be like.
I choose how I speak, and you can't impose your view of the world on me. Socially and politically, I work to expand people's rights and the protection of those rights. And in my work life,
Well, like, why couldn't you talk about those commitments up front? Why do you have to? Although this video actually kind of calls them into like how seriously committed you are, because you clearly aren't really listening to the discussion in a way that suggests that you are really engaged with it, and you're talking in this most annoying sort of blowhard white liberal way where you like are trying to suggest that like just reactionary bigoted fucks have a point when they really don't. Oh, God.
I work to help people interact effectively across these kinds of differences.
Yes, he did say that that's self-determination. That, wanting to have who you are as a human being respected is somehow on the same level as wanting to be respected for what an asshole you are.
Personally, I'm working on navigating that tension around audience design, and I'm
like the captain of the Titanic was.
trying to just accept people where they are. If that means using a pronoun that doesn't click for me because it's upsetting when I don't, that's fine.
Ooh, wow, that's big of you. That's big of you. Do you treat not using the N-word like a favor too?
Especially when it's only a theoretical or a philosophical question for me, but for the other person, it's their life.
It's really like considering how few people actually watch to the end of the average YouTube video. I don't know the analytics on this. This would be the thing to lead with if you care. This would be the thing you start out with to say, this isn't about an abstractly linguistic discussion about what pronouns are and how we make, use antecedents and shit. This is about people's lives. This is about whether people get to be treated with respect in society or whether people get shat on. That's what you fucking lead with, because if there's one thing that people are wrong about the discussion about pronouns, including this jabroni, it's that the stakes of the debate are just constantly just misrepresented.
In some cases, it's related to a struggle that is literally life or death. But also, that means recognizing that someone's not up to date with the newest terminology but is approaching an interaction out of mutual respect. I'm going to respect that as well.
Well, are you going to respect the fact that you might not be the person to be making that call? Like, maybe since this is not something, like, he's been so demonstratively unaffected by this personally, that maybe he should look to the people for whom this is a survival instinct to say, is this and take their cues on whether the person in question is in fact trying and just fucking up a little bit versus being deliberately hurtful. Maybe he's not the one who's gonna. Maybe you're not the one to make that judgment, dude.
Gotta live with that tension. To quote Gene Kelly, I've had one motto, which I've always lived by.
Ugh.
Dignity. Always dignity. Promised this one would be spicy,
Oh,
and I'd love to know.
yeah, no. This is as spicy. This shit is as spicy as an unsalted potato. This is not a spicy take. This is the blandest thing on the menu.
Know your thoughts on neopronouns and who gets to decide how we refer to one another. So leave me a comment if you like.
This is so unspicy that you could use this video if you've run out of Imodium.